selling a home, but a lifestyle. Oops, there we go. Got it. I'll let them do a little more detailed introduction of themselves a little later on as I conclude with the introduction remarks. But I thought I'd start off with just kind of telling the town and the public about the team of experts engaged to help out with that. Again, Lee Bowman's my name, local a principal of Legion Land and Development. We're serving as the local development rep for Beechwood, more than experience here in the Chapel Hill area, providing places for people to live, work, and play. Our team's looking really forward over the next several months to work with the town staff and all the advisory boards here in Chapel Hill. You'll find that our experts have experiences that have enabled us to develop and that not only meets the town's robust technical requirements, but they've been creative in our approach to integrate all the complexities that are important to this housing affordability, to architectural uniqueness, as well as transportation concerns. We've been very thoughtful on how to balance those desires. Our lead project and engineer is Wolpert. They're an international planning and engineering offices in the Carolinas. Our planners are out of their Atlanta office, but actually have local expertise, as one of them grew up here in Chapel Hill. FMK is the primary architect for the project, and they are responsible for the condo buildings. They are based in Charlotte and consider architectural design as a craft and solution-based approach, and have integrated that thinking into our designs. McKim & Creed handles a variety of engineering matters for us, but for this project, they're focused on our utilities. They have a national footprint, but a large presence here in the Triangle. Transportation engineering is being handled by Emily Horn. They do design work across the globe, but their local expertise is focused on transportation services with decades of work here in Chapel Hill. We've also engaged a commercial consultant, John Fugo. John's very familiar with the local submarket, as he was involved with creating and managing the Southern Village commercial development, among others. And while our proposed retail is much smaller in scale, he's helping us understand the complementary users that are needed for the broader market, while making sure that we identify a sufficient neighborhood retail offering. And finally, we've engaged a local landscape planning and architecture firm, Surface 678, to help out with open space planning, landscape design, making. They work up and down the eastern seaboard, but have a strong foothold here in the Carolinas. That's really our team of experts that's working on the plan. And next, I'll get into an overview of that plan. But before I do so, hand it over to the principal of Beechwood Homes, Stephen Dubb. He's going to get background about Beechwood and perspective on who they are and why the Carolinas and why South Creek. So, Stephen.
Thanks, Lee. And Lee, just so you know, your internet's going in and out a little bit. We were able to get most of what you were saying, but
okay, I'm sorry, guys. Yeah,
no worries. Like I said, we got most of it. So
I may have to do off.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephen Dubb from Beechwood Homes. As Lee said, I'm one of the principals. I just, first of all, want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to listen to us talk about this proposed community today. And I asked Lee if I could just take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about Beechwood, because I think who the developer is really does matter. And so I just wanted to give you a bit of history so that you know a little bit about us and who we are and our approach to things. So the company was started in the mid-1980s by my father, Michael Dubb. I have been here for 15 years. And we're running the business together. In the past 35 years that we've been operating, we've built, I think, over 9,000 homes across New York State, mostly in Long Island and the outer boroughs of New York City. And that's 9,000 homes over, I want to say, in 75 or so different communities. And we really build all types of housing. We don't have one specific type of housing or price point that we focus on. So we have built hundreds of affordable homes in New York City and Nassau and Suffolk County. And we built $7 million estates in the Hamptons. But by and large, what we build is housing for middle-class New Yorkers. And by that, I mean single-family homes, townhomes, some multifamily product, priced from the 400s to the 700,000s, which in Long Island is considered pretty affordable for middle-class housing. We're a family-owned company. which means that we don't always have to make decisions in what we build based on what's best for the bottom line. We get to make decisions based on what we think would look nicest or fit in best with the community, which is great because we are proud of everything that we've built and want to remain proud of the communities that we build when we come and visit 5, 10, 20 years later. And that would be no different here in Chapel Hill. Early in 2020, we decided to expand into the Carolinas, and we're now building and selling 2 communities near Charlotte. We're about to open a 3rd community for sale in a couple of weeks. Those will total over 300 homes. And then in coming to Chapel Hill, I don't think I need to explain to anybody who's on the Zoom call today why Chapel Hill is such a special place, and that's why we were attracted to it. But when we looked at the Obie Creek site, we felt that we could improve upon the approved Obie Creek plan in a way that was maybe less intensive of a use from a traffic point of view, maybe from a total built square footage point of view, but also did more to address some of the challenges that the communities identified. And by those challenges, I mean affordability for housing. I think the town council has commissioned more than one study that's identified the missing middle as a big challenge for Chapel Hill. I think the statistic is that there are 19,000 people who commute into Chapel Hill every day to work there, but can't afford to live there. And so in thinking about the design of the South Creek community, we really thought about trying to help address the missing middle, the lack of housing for the missing middle in Chapel Hill. And of course, no one project is going to solve these problems. They're large problems, but we can certainly help move it in the right direction. And so by missing middle, I mean housing in the $400,000 and $500,000, $600,000 range, in addition to the 15% affordable housing that we plan to build. And I also mean housing that's designed for young professionals and young families, because and amenities, community amenities as well, because that's what I think a few studies the town's commissioned have identified as missing in Chapel Hill. And in addition to that, we're planning to preserve the 80 acres on the east side of Obie Creek in perpetuity. So we would just be developing the 40 acres on the west side of the creek. And so we spent a lot of time over the last year since we've had those meetings with the different town boards and with the town council and gotten input with from the public on refining this plan, and we're excited to show it to you. So with that, Lee, I'll hand it back to you, but I just wanted to say hello to everybody, and we're looking forward to the next steps in the process.
Super. Thank you, Stephen. And I think if I keep my video off, how's my voice? Is it still
much better? Yeah.
Okay. Let me do that. And Sharnika, I'll try to share my screen with that slideshow, but perhaps if I get unstable internet, I may need you to pull that up for me, but give me 1 second here. And we got an overview of the site plan as Stephen was alluding to. So let's see here. Okay, is that any? Oh, so is everybody see that? So I think you're on mute, Sharnika. Is that working? Okay, good.
You're still, Lee, you're still kind of cutting out. So I can try to share.
Okay.
If you want to stick to audio.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing, and if you don't mind, and I'll give you cues as to when to change the screen. My apologies. It just got fiber connection. Something's going on here today where I'm at. Oh boy.
Okay. Can everyone see that? Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of highlight some key features, and after that, I'd certainly look forward to hearing from questions and comments from the public. This first page is the beginning of our application, our rezoning application. It's the first of 33 sheets, actually. It's the cover page, and you can see there that aerial photo. Our project is there on kind of the right side of 15501 Southern Village on the left, and then down in that bottom part of the middle page is our actual site plan. That's about a 40-acre piece where development is, but as Stephen alluded to, there's another 80 acres to net 120. And if you could go to the next page or next sheet, Shanika, in the slideshow. And so, yeah, there we go. So that red line there, that's the project boundary. And this is actually the 5th sheet in our submittal of 33 pages, but I can, for the submittal or for the presentation, I condensed them, to go through pages that are more relevant right now. But as you can see, it's 120 acres total, and the property is kind of characterized as moderate to steep slopes on both sides of Wilson Creek. And so Wilson Creek is there kind of in the middle. It bisects the property and meanders to the northward part of the project towards Morgan Creek. And we'll talk a little bit more about the slopes and how our aim is in regarding topography and using the grade, so to speak, to be made up in the buildings with underground parking. Our architect is here, can speak to that. But just kind of wanted to focus in on the entirety of the project. And, Stephen mentioned earlier that property on the eastern side of Wilson Creek, I think it was referred to as Obie Creek earlier. I think officially it is known as Wilson Creek, but that 80 or so acres is proposed to be in a conservation easement. And we've been talking to some folks locally that do that type of work about handling that for us. So we're really excited about that opportunity to preserve that 80 acres in perpetuity as it exists. So if you would scroll to the next page, that's kind of the middle of our application document, but it's a little more detailed site plan that we can talk about, and maybe just zoom in just a hair there, if you don't mind. That's that 40-acre piece of property that's going to propose to be developed. And up, maybe back one more. I'm sorry, back to where you were. Apologies for the awkwardness here, but they're Road A and Road B. Those, for reference, on the other side of 15501, Road A is known as Sumac, and Road B is Market Street at Southern Village. There you go. Yes, ma'am. Thank you there. So obviously, most people know the Southern Village Market Street intersection, and then Sumac is kind of the access point that you've got into the Southern Community Park there. From a transportation standpoint, we want both of those intersections and access point to be full service or full movement intersections, to be designed in a manner in which it's friendly for pedestrians and bicyclists on grade. So we've been working with town staff and DOT on doing so, and we're in the middle of that process as it relates to those improvements that meet the town's standards and DOT. So from an access standpoint, those will be our primary two, but then a little bit more to the right of the page, it's kind of off the screen there too. It would be a northernmost access point. That would be really more of a right in, right out there. Yes, right in there. Thank you. Yeah. And so in conjunction with the analysis of these intersection improvements, we're also working on how to integrate a bus rapid transit site there at Road B at Market Street, north or south side of that intersection. We're still working on the best place to integrate that, but we believe and we're very excited about the ability to provide multiple modes of transportation for not just our residents, but the community at large. And so now I wanted to kind of touch on, Stephen did a great job earlier talking about the housing typology, but now that you can see the site plan, if you see the more rectangular shaped buildings, that's the for sale condominiums. We said we have townhouses and we have condominiums, but the condominiums make up the majority of our housing types. Those are proposed to be 526 units. They range in price points and sizing from studios on up to larger 3-bedroom units. However, the majority of them will be 1 and 2 bedroom units. I mentioned townhouses, that they will be interspersed throughout. They're kind of the smaller rectangles and blocks of 4 or so generally that are throughout the property. And those, again, the goal we've got is to provide a variety of segments of price points and housing options. We've also planned a small neighborhood commercial offering. So back over there at Market Street, the Road B intersection is really our primary commercial node that we're proposing. That L-shaped building right there beside where it says Road B, yes, thank you. That is proposed to have retail on the ground floor. And then above that would be similar to our condo buildings. The units there would be, but they would be apartment units, for rent units. About 60 or so units are proposed there. And then a couple of other, that building 12 and building 10, those are proposed to be some office and retail and restaurant space too. And then if you kind of move over to the central part of the development, the Road A, a node there and kind of the middle, that, yes, that area right in the central part is a terraced green space that has kind of an organizing principle for that part of the neighborhood, but also will provide programming for our residents and the public at large. In the corners of those buildings surrounding that terrace would be amenity space for our residents. They can, do things like fitness, have a cooking class, meeting space, that type of thing is what's proposed to be there for the residents. And so in summary, what we're proposing is a mix of complementary land uses in which they're clustered here in this compact manner so that we can preserve that 80 acres on the other side of Wilson Creek. And we think this approach will bolster that stock of housing that the town needs. And it's, as Stephen mentioned, it was actually highlighted in some of the studies that the town has commissioned recently by offering a variety of housing types that are suitable for a wide range of income levels and lifestyles. There's so many people that work at UNC and the hospitals that don't have options for housing here in Chapel Hill. And we hope they're just one example of the folks that will choose this neighborhood to be their home. And so at this point, though, I'd like to ask our architect, Mark Fischerow with FMK to give a little more context to our site plan and highlight some of the building architecture. He may need your help too, Charnika, with a couple of the slides that he's got.
Charnika, I'm going to try and share my screen because hopefully I don't have the same internet problems that Lee has. Bear with me here. Okay, everybody see that?
Yes, got you, Mark.
Give me just a minute here. Let me get this maximized so you're not seeing my dog. Okay, what I wanted, the real one of the biggest challenges with this site is, from a planning standpoint, is creating a neighborhood, but also probably the single biggest challenge on this particular site is the topography, because we do fall somewhat precipitously from 15501 down to Wilson Creek or Obie Creek. And so what we've done is the site plan basically sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, terraces the site down the hill so that Road A is fairly steeply sloped off of the intersection, which again, this would be Sumac right here at the center. And Road B is also relatively steeply sloped down as Market Street. And those both come down to Road C that runs left to right on your screen, which is really our primary sort of main street of this community. And then Road E is lower still and Road F is lower still. So it's stair stepping down the hill. And what we tried to also do is to, we've incorporated as much parking, and this is actually an upside of the topography that we're dealing with, is we incorporated as much parking as possible under the buildings. And the fact that we have so much topography does allow us to do that. And we're doing it in such a way that well, obviously certain sides of these parking garages are enclosed by retaining earth. Most of them have a substantial amount of open sides to them, which doesn't create that sort of true basement garage syndrome. But as Lee pointed out, we have the buildings that are numbered on this site plan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through the middle here, 6, 7, 8, 9 across the bottom. 1 through 9 are all condo buildings. All of these, and I have to control the cursor so I can kind of reiterate some of the things. All of these in this zone are varying sizes of townhomes, as are these right here in this zone. Those are also townhomes. So the intent is to create as much variety as possible of the building types. But what we've done is we have essentially for the condos themselves, we have what we refer to as a short building, which is buildings 1, 2, and 6. And then we have the longer building, which is 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm going to show you, I think I'm going to show you what those buildings look like. This is one of the shorter buildings, the short condo buildings. And by way of explanation, this is actually, I believe, building 1, which would be on the right-hand side of Sumac. And this elevation would be we intentionally had a narrow elevation facing 15501 to not have our buildings have an overwhelming presence on 15501, but instead kind of have a definite presence, but not dominating it. So this narrower facade is the one that faces 15501, and on the right-hand side here, where my cursor is where Sumac would be at its highest point. And you can see on this side an entrance to the parking deck on the back side. This elevation is an elevation basically cut through Sumac with 15501 up here to the left, and I think it's road B or road C is right here to the extreme right of this plan. These shorter buildings are what we call a 4/2, which is four stories of building above 2 levels of parking deck. And you can see the 2 levels of parking deck. This is the actual back side of the building. So again, 15501 is up here on the right, road C is on the left, and you can see it slopes down to where we have 1 level of parking down here, and then the 2nd level of parking is above it. And then you've got 4 stories of unit above that, or of residential condos above that. The design of the architecture is intended to be somewhat traditional, somewhat familiar, but not rotely traditional. It's a comfortable composition. It borrows from traditional proportions, etc. But it's got a little bit more of a contemporary twist to it. You'll see that there are sloped roofs and parapet roofs. We kind of, for the same reason, we're trying to create variety. We also, architecturally, we are trying to break the building up into different masses so that the length of the building is not felt as strongly as it might otherwise be felt. So you have this sort of feeling like you've got a mass here and a mass here and a mass here as you would walk past the building. And the same thing, this is the front side. You've got a similar kind of breaking up the mass. I refer to that as the bookshelf approach to the architecture rather than the cruise ship approach. The cruise ship is kind of that big long where the whole thing has the same horizontal lines to it. We are also, the roof, one of the things we're capitalizing on with the sloped roofs is the ability to put condensing units up on the roofs of the buildings so that they will not have any impact on the streetscape and won't be a noise source. They're up high and out of the way and screened from view. But this is the shorter building, and this is the longer building. Like I said, the shorter building is the 2 that are up on the street and 1 other. There are 3 of those. There are 6 of these, and these are bigger buildings. They're longer. and they are 5/2. So you've got 5 stories over 2 stories of parking deck. The front elevation of that, the one that faces our main street, so to speak, that I referred to, which I think is Road C on the site plan, is this facade. And you'll notice that there's no driveway connections on this facade at all. What you're seeing with these cars is cars going up the sloped street in front of the building. We're creating a streetscape with parallel parking, and then on the back side of the building is where we enter the parking deck. So we basically, along our main street, we effectively eliminate any pedestrian vehicular conflicts where people might be pulling into the parking deck and walking by on the sidewalk. But again, you can see the vocabulary of the architecture is similar to the shorter buildings, where we're creating variety with color and materials and building massing. And we're again using the sloped roof pitches and the parapets mixed together to create some variety of architecture.
Good, Mark. Thank you. I think that's probably a good stopping point there, unless there's one other burning thought or
No,
two.
that's good. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I've just got a few more points to make, and then certainly open it up for questions, and we'll be here to answer any questions or comments you might have.
I wanted to remind you that the meeting is an hour, so we do have until 6:15.
Okay.
So just to allow some time for some public questions. And
Yeah.
comments.
Okay. Well, and I'll be really brief, and just wanted to highlight some of the things that aren't really site plan related, but we've talked about, like affordable housing, for example. Stephen mentioned, that early on in his remarks, and from our perspective, as Stephen said, we know the town's objectives in its inclusionary zoning ordinance, and we've actually been meeting with local affordable housing providers over the past several months to really understand and provide something here in the southern part of Chapel Hill that meets not just the ordinance requirements, but meets the needs of the community. We've talked to folks that do supportive housing. We've talked to a variety of other affordable housing developers to figure out, how we can creatively assist in their needs. You've seen with our site plan and our product offering, we've got a variety of housing types, from smaller to larger, that meet all types of income levels. So we think we've got a really diverse kind of workforce housing opportunity there, as I alluded to with some of the UNC potential there. But we do recognize the town's requirements, and our proposal does indicate that we're willing to work with the town to figure out what's the right mix, because we'll be offering 103 of these units as affordable housing units. And we know that's a significant amount of units. So we're willing to work with the right partners. We've had a couple of conversations more recently, but then over the past several months, we've been engaged with those folks, including the Community Home Trust folks. So we're excited about what that could lead to. And then finally, sustainability is an important topic to us, as I know it is to those in our community. Mark may not have touched on it, but I think he talked about up on the rooftops. We're evaluating the chance to do solar there. We've engaged with a local consulting firm, Southern Energy Management. They're actually a national thought leader in that space, but they're here in the Triangle to help us evaluate that feasibility. Also, electronic charging stations throughout the condo underbuilding parkings, as well as some surface ones. And it's not just about meeting the town's energy management plan, but about really providing what is needed and important to the community as a whole. So why don't I just stop there? There's a lot of other things we could talk about, but certainly want to be respectful of everyone's time and hear those that have thoughts or comments.
If any members of the public have questions, you can use the raise your hand feature, and we can call on them as we see them. And apologize for if we mess your names up.
I have a question.
John Reese, I see your hand raised. And Sarah Harold, you're next.
I can wait. I think she said something first, so.
Sarah? Celie?
Yes, I have a
Hi,
question.
thank you. Sorry. I think I was on mute. I've been using Obi Creek and, as a recreation area since 1975. What steps are you, in our zoning right next door limits us to 1 resident per acre to reduce impacts to the creek and the watershed. So what are you doing to protect the natural area? I understand the 80 acres in conservation easement, but are there other things?
Yeah, so that's kind of a twofold question there as far as the conservation approach goes regarding the kind of passive recreational use. That will still be allowed. That's our goal with the folks that we're working with that would kind of hold that easement, that there would still be that opportunity for it to be utilized for trail users. And certainly not just the residents, but the local community as yourself. And hopefully we can then connect with other nearby or adjacent trail systems. So we got a really great community amenity there. Regarding stormwater and protection of Wilson Creek, Obi Creek, certainly that is an area of importance to us, and our engineering team has studied that. We've been out on site with town staff, looked at the uniqueness of it, some of the concerns from the previous approval, and how the approach was done there. And I think with our creative engineering approach, we've got a variety of stormwater management devices that might be too much in the weeds to get into in detail here, but we're certainly going to meet the town standards with those, and look forward to kind of discussing that at some of these advisory board meetings in more detail. There is a stormwater advisory board committee, and so we'll be talking with those types of details at that time.
Can,
Celie or John?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
I-
John, you
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll be quick. Sorry about that. Just a couple of things about the electric car charging. I think you should really, you probably are, but you should, with the timeline of building this, you really need to have a lot, a lot more than a minimum. A concern I have, and I'm going to direct this mostly to the town, but also to the applicant, Sumac Road, having a connectivity there. Right now, Sumac Road, is a wide road, and it goes through a park area. And I'm concerned about speeding already on Sumac Road. In addition to signaling, I think there should be some traffic calming measures on the Southern Village side for Sumac, because obviously this is going to increase traffic onto that road. And then the last thing real quick is it's really cool that you've got this path along 15501, but it's kind of zigzaggy. And, we don't build roads like that. It may look good, but when you're making a path that people want to make movements on, you're making it longer for them to go someplace on that path when you're having it like an S instead of having it go straight. And something to think about, depending on whether you consider that path a recreational facility or an extension of some sort of mobility connections for people reaching the BRT station or moving along that corridor. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, points well taken. And as it relates to your last point, we know we need to do some more grading analysis on that and integrate some more thought on that, and bringing in that local landscape architect to help out with that is going to be a big enhancement to that. So certainly that's good feedback, and we'll take that into consideration. And then I took some notes there about the other comments regarding the Sumac on the other side of Sumac, and when we talk with our engineers with the town too, we'll bring those up as well. But thank you.
Celie and then Carol.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. One, this project is out of character of the area, and it's surrounded by quiet residential neighborhoods. A place where there can be amplified music would be would allow people sitting in their homes and their bedrooms to be unwilling attendees. I would ask that you do no amplified music or sound as a covenant, as just in respect for the surrounding neighborhoods, which, like I say, are quiet neighborhoods for people who bought in those areas or rent in those areas because they didn't want to live downtown. So I would plead with you not to have amplified entertainment in this area. Southern Village has a little now and then in the middle of a somewhat of a commercial area. This is residential, and right across the creek are people's yards. They've been there for a long time. The other comment that I have is this creek is designated as nutrient sensitive, environmentally sensitive, and there is a lot of impervious surface. There is an article in Scientific American in the last spring about another town that ended up having to do some very expensive cleanup of the creek. This I consider as pre-cleanup project because it is the density is so great and the impervious surface above this already endangered creek is just too much. It needs to be lightened up. And so I would just ask that you have more concern for the creek by lowering the density, and have concern for the neighbors that you're moving into with this large, very out of character project, and not have amplified entertainment outside. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Definitely take your comments under consideration and appreciate the feedback.
Carol?
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you for holding this hearing. It's very interesting. I'm just wondering, apropos of the last speaker, were lower density projects considered? How did you reach this this configuration, this split? And also, if I missed it at the beginning, I apologize, but I didn't hear what the timeline is for the project.
Does the town want to answer that timeline or question?
Well, the project is still in the first round of review, and we have not set the advisory board schedule yet. They are applying for a conditional zoning, which I think the timeframe could be 12 to 18 months to go through the planning process.
So what about, so that's the first phase, but if you're actually building, how long would something like this, assuming it passes the various reviews, would it take to build?
So from that regard, I can answer that. And it's probably a phased approach, right? Not all of the units would be built at once, but the infrastructure perhaps might be built at once. So that would be the grading and the roadway work and the utilities and all that. But then the buildings would come online thereafter. So it's probably somewhere in the 5 to 7 year timeframe of a project based on a lot of factors that right now we try to predict, right, with the economic certainties that we have, but that's always a caveat. So back to your earlier comment, again, appreciate the thoughts on the densities, and in fact, this is quite a bit less than the density and the intensity of use from the previous or the currently approved project, which is known as OB Creek. We're actually kind of down zoning this. And as an example of that would be regarding traffic. So I mentioned earlier that we had we'd begun some traffic and transportation studies, and just the traffic from our project that would be generated compared to the currently approved OB Creek project, we're at 20% of that. So from our perspective, this is a lower density option, but definitely can appreciate your concern regarding, what you deem to be low dense.
Yeah. Do you have any more, may I ask a follow-up question? Well, I'm just concerned, do you have any concept of the floor plans at this point, or is that just way too early?
It's a good question. It's not way too early. It is part, of figuring out the footprints of those buildings and the unit count and parking. So we've got to make some sort of estimates or projections for that. We haven't done the hard design work yet, but they do range. Like I said earlier, we've got studios that are in the 500 or so square foot on up to 3 bedrooms that are closing into 2,000 square foot of condos. So quite a variety of options to choose from. And the meat of the offering is that 1 to 2 bedrooms, and they're in that 700-800 square feet up to 1,100-1,200 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there additional comments or questions? John, did you have another question?
I do, but I saw Stuart raise his hand also, so I'll wait since I've
Stuart?
already asked the question.
Yes, thank you. I was curious, in the last project, there was talk of a bridge connecting over 15501 between Southern Village and this development. Is that still being considered, and what planning has been done about that so far? I'm talking about a pedestrian bridge.
Right. Yes, sir. Gotcha. And no, that's something that as we were looking at the initial plans, it's something that is in our consideration, but not a pedestrian bridge. What's in our consideration is safe pedestrian and bicycle crossings of those two intersections. Actually, right now, there is a pedestrian crossing from Southern Village on that northern side. Southern Village's northern access point. Pedestrians cross there to get on the bus to go to campus. And so what we're doing with this study with DOT, the town engineers and our our own engineers from Kimley Horn, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're looking at those two primary intersections and trying to configure them in a way that is not just safe for vehicles, but it's also in consideration of safety measures for pedestrians and bicycles.
So there's definitely the bridge idea is ruled out at this point.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And kind of, as I mentioned, I think to Carol regarding the intensity of use, I think, what was proposed with the currently approved plan had quite a bit more users and more of a retail and shopping approach. And perhaps that's merited for that type of use. But for our residential use, we don't believe that's needed.
Thank you.
John, do you want to go? I see.
Yeah, just real quick.
Then Paul.
I was going to make a comment, and I'll wait on that one. But regarding the crossings, I would recommend having some sort of charrette or some sort of review with people who currently use transit in like Southern Village to help define how you might make those crossings. For example, the crossing you just mentioned at Arlen Park, I just actually used it today to catch a bus. One of the flaws of that particular crossing is the crosswalk is only on the south side of the intersection, not the north side. So someone trying to catch the north-south bus, for example, has to cross 2 roads to get to it as opposed to 1. And so it's little things like that, this is the perfect time to think about them. It's best to talk to people who actually use those transit facilities in order to help design it. So my advice would be to work out some sort of process where you could just basically collect input from people who are current transit users in the area to help design that. And then the second thing is Southern Village has some 2-over-1s in the district already, much more modest than what you're talking about as far as parking. One of the things I've just observed walking around is I don't notice that those parking structures below those condos are heavily used. And so I would recommend, if you can, I don't know how you do it, to maybe examine those particular existing structures to understand how they're being parked, because obviously parking costs money, and if you reduce the parking, you can save money, and maybe you don't need it all, and that's all.
Good point. Yes, thank you. Both points are well noted, and certainly when we meet with the town and DOT regarding those intersection improvements, there's a lot of different parties to that discussion, right? It's not just us or the town. NCDOT is the controlling factor of that road and those improvements. So, but I like your idea of talking to the users. We have been meeting with the town's transit department, and they've provided some dialogue and some thoughts too, but certainly those folks like yourself that use it, I'm certainly open to that feedback too. Thank you.
Paul? You're muted.
Thank you. It would help if I came off mute. Thank you, Sharnika. Lee, you may have covered this in the very beginning, but is it incorporating what used to be the Strata Solar building across from Southern Village, or will that remain, and it's now a church, I believe, or will that remain independent property from what you're developing?
Yeah, so that property is not, I did not mention this, but a good point for reference. That's not under our ownership, and that is not proposed to be a part of this rezoning application. There is positive communication and dialogue with that owner, and there may be some shared parking and or cross easements for folks to travel in and out of there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Burke?
Hi, thanks. So I just had sort of a question / comment, and I'm gonna read this from the Missing Middle Housing website. Missing middle housing is defined as a range of house scale buildings with multiple units, compatible in scale and form with detached single family homes located in a walkable neighborhood. And I think that's sort of in pretty stark contrast to the large scale condo buildings that you're proposing. And I guess I'm a little unclear where the disconnect is here, because it seems like the development is tailored a lot more towards high density housing versus what's defined as missing middle housing.
Yeah, I understood, Ryan, and I think that's right now. There's a challenge in terminology throughout the country as to how you can get housing that's affordable and what do you call it and all that. I think a year or so ago, missing middle was a term that was used by the town, and we've utilized it sometimes. I know that's maybe been utilized not exactly in the context of the folks that designed it. Actually, I was at a conference with the originator of that phrase this I guess it would be the spring. And so, yeah, I understand your point, and certainly appreciate it, and how we can better describe what we're saying. What we're saying is that we are offering housing that hits that middle income price point. So that might be a more accurate term to use.
Okay, and so just to follow up with you quickly, have you all done any actual studies on housing demand in the area and the types of amenities that middle income families are looking for? I know like nationally, there are trends towards not wanting condensed housing in condo units, and people are looking for more outdoor space, yards, just space to move around. Has any type of study been done there in terms of the Chapel Hill market?
Yeah, definitely done several market studies, done ones where we've engaged large national type consultants, and then even done others with local folks, done our own kind of boots on the ground evaluation. Not just Chapel Hill, because Chapel Hill's really unique in the housing that has been made available. We've looked at Durham and Raleigh and some of those other sort of like areas when you think about a town center and then an area outside of that. So we've tried to do some comparables in our region, the triangle, and then also, looked at the state and what's happening nationally.
Ryan, did that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
That's okay for now. Thanks.
Okay, Elizabeth? You're muted.
Hi. I do want to comment on someone who spoke earlier about the parking in Southern Village. I think that person was probably referring to some of the units around the green that are not residential. I happen to live above Weaver Street in Southern Village, and we have parking issues all the time because we have non-covered parking. And our problem is that it's so close to the north-south bus stop that people who don't live here or work here are using our parking spaces, and therefore it gets to be really difficult at times to find parking. So I would encourage you to talk to all of the people, not just some of the people, in regards to parking needs.
Thank you. Good point. And definitely making notes of that to make sure we consider that as the plan evolves. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
I have a quick question on the impact on our schools. Assuming that there are families that will be residents, what do you forecast the impact on Scroggs and Culbreth in particular, which could be walkable, and Carrboro High School? Thank you.
We don't have at this time, we don't have a formal study that provides that impact. It's something that, as the process evolves, we'll be looking at that. We did an analysis early on, and it's from memory. And so just with the units being a little bit smaller in nature, the kind of the calculator of kids per unit evolves from that. So I'd kind of be giving you inaccurate information if I was trying to go back to that information I had in the past. So apologies, I don't have that answer for you, but it's definitely something that we will be analyzing here.
I have a few minutes left of the meeting. Are there additional questions, or Lee, did you or your team have
I think we've
comments?
covered it all, unless team, if anything missed or misstated, please help me out here. And apologies on the internet stability. Definitely did not intend for it to be that way, but I think we were able to work through it.
Well, I don't see any hands. Someone has a question or comment, feel free to speak up. Otherwise, I think we're done for the evening.
Okay. Well, thank you. We appreciate everything. Excited to work with you all in the community on this project, and thanks again.
We've also provided a copy of Lee's presentation on the project page on the town's website, and we'll be updating that as the project goes through the conditional zoning process. You can also email me if you have any questions, and enjoy your evenings.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.